In March 2018, we opened our doors to the public with a vision not just to create challenging professional theatre, but to use this as a platform to inspire and bring communities together. Theatre and culture build identity. With theatre and culture in our local life, the community landscape is more vibrant. Local life is enriched. We believe that the benefits of theatre should be available for everyone. Our Theatre for All programme has removed financial barriers, giving disadvantaged people access to the theatre free of charge.
So we were told that we'd come here and have a Christmas meal and then go and watch A Christmas Carol.
Our aim is to make live professional theatre available to everyone and use that experience for positive change. Theatre can be transformational in young lives. Our academy is now in its 4th year, and we continue to build on our vision of bringing the best performing arts tuition to the heart of the Cotswolds. We work hard to make our academy as inclusive and as accessible as possible. Discounts apply for parents with more than one child. Our bursaries help support talented children from less affluent backgrounds. The Academy creates a fun and challenging environment where children can build friendships and develop key skills not just for theatre, but for life. We are also able to provide real opportunities for students who wish to pursue careers in the arts.
My name is Harry Apps. I am currently playing Marius in Les Miserables in the West End.
Barn outreach and learning programmes engage with thousands of people. Our free workshops support the drama curriculum in local schools. Singing and musical theatre workshops in community groups and care homes have helped address issues of isolation. Our Song for Cirencester project in aid of mental health charities brought our community together in an unprecedented way. We've collaborated with many charities in the region, including the Churn project, to support individuals dealing with the barriers to finding work.
Since working with you, and my life's changed. It's given me some purpose, given me an interest, some confidence I was lacking prior to all this.
The Barn Theatre played a pivotal role in the town's 2018 World War I centenary celebrations. Who could forget our record-breaking Human Poppy? Our live streaming work on the annual Advent Festival helped thousands engage and take part in Cirencester's Christmas festivities. In these times of uncertainty, we strive to keep the community together. The theatre may be temporarily closed, but our commitment to you goes on. Even now, our amazing costume department are helping the NHS by making scrubs for frontline workers. We've used our technology to build a free live streaming service that provides much needed community news and entertainment for all the family. Broadcasting every day to keep us all connected. We are not just a theatre. We are the Barn.
Another week in lockdown. This is Cotswold District Council Live. Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Cotswold District Council Live, here from the Barn Theatre in the centre of Cirencester. Thrilled to say I'm joined today by a number of guests. Here in the studio, I'm joined by Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing, Councillor Jenny Forde.
Hello.
I'm thrilled to be joined by representatives from Gloucestershire Constabulary. We have got Chief Inspector Richard Pegler, had to get your title right there, we don't want to mess that up. And we've also got Inspector Simon Ellson. So, gentlemen, we're absolutely delighted to have you here today. And I know many residents have been submitting questions for you guys, which we will come to in a moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
As we usually do, a big thank you to the Barn Theatre for hosting us, for making these live shows possible. In a time of real hardship, they have really transformed their operation here and have put on a fantastic suite of shows and entertainment while we're all locked down in our homes. And again, a big thank you, as I do every week, to all the NHS workers out there who are on the front line and in many cases sacrificing their lives to tackle this pandemic. We thank all of our key workers, we thank all of our council staff for all of the work that they are doing to ensure that our society and our community continues to function. And today's particularly poignant because it's International Workers' Memorial Day. Happens on the 28th of April every year. But I think today is even more important. And members of the council, I know many residents out there joined for a minute's silence at 11 o'clock this morning to mark International Workers' Memorial Day. Many people have paid the ultimate sacrifice in fighting this pandemic, and we thank them for that sacrifice. So we're going to be with you for between 45 minutes and an hour. We're going to be taking your questions. We're going to have updates from our cabinet members. We're going to have an update from the police. We've got updates on waste and recycling. We know that's a big issue. So we hope today to get through as much as possible and leave you as informed as we possibly can be. We're going to start with my colleague, Councillor Jenny Forde, who hasn't been on the show for a few weeks. I'm delighted to say she's joining us today in the studio. Jenny, we'll hand over to you a bit about what you do and what you've been working on.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joe. So, as a friend asked me the other day on a Zoom teenie, what is the council actually doing at the moment? Well, aside from keeping the key services going, such as waste collection, planning, environmental services, fly tipping, council tax support, paying out £27 million in business grants and benefits, etc., a bit of a what have the Romans ever done for us moment. I think she wished she'd never asked. Within a matter of days, central government turned to us at district councils to carry out and implement a number of initiatives to support the vulnerable in our communities. Our community resilience teams, made up of a variety of officers from across different disciplines, are there to support our residents, especially those people self-isolating for up to 12 weeks who are not on the national government's shielded community lists. These people may need help getting food deliveries, collecting prescriptions, putting bins out, dog walking, or simply wanting some social contact by telephone. On one occasion, our officers even took a birthday message to a resident who was on her own, turning 101. Working as a council officer is not always held in the same high esteem as, say, the NHS or the police or the fire service, and yet they are often working on behalf of some of the most vulnerable and often overlooked people in the Cotswolds. They are working mostly from home with their own pressures, anxieties, and childcare and carer demands as others, and they are also on the receiving end of people experiencing heightened levels of anxiety or who are just genuinely frightened by the circumstances they have found themselves in. It's tough and it's relentless, and it's not an overstatement to say that I have felt privileged and humbled by the council officers' commitment, compassion and dedication to ensuring that no one in the Cotswolds is overlooked and that everyone has access to the support they need to get through this. As one of our managers said the other day, the amount that they have cared and the lengths they have gone to has reduced me to tears more than once. What a fabulous bunch of people. We have also been supporting and working closely with our main voluntary sector professional organisations, such as the Cotswold Food Banks, Cotswold Friends, Citizens Advice, Home Start, and the Churn Project, and that, I know, is just a few, who work all year round supporting people in need. They are the super brands of the Cotswolds for 2020 and hopefully into the new future, and we thank them so much. In terms of public safety, I personally speak to the police on an almost daily basis, and certainly as soon as we are aware of any situations. Keeping our residents safe and the meaning of that has changed during the crisis, but this remains absolutely one of our top priorities. We are very lucky to have such compassionate and intelligent police force looking after us here. I would say that, wouldn't I? They're just over there. I still chair our community safety partnership. We meet weekly at present with the police, with the Gloucestershire Domestic Abuse Support Services, Environmental Services, Drug and Alcohol, and the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, and our community safety officers to discuss issues such as social distancing issues, second homes, crime, fraud, bonfires, and safeguarding issues, and last but certainly not least, domestic abuse and violence. And finally, you, the people of the Cotswolds. As my daughter would say, OMG. I'm running out of adjectives to describe people, so I'm going to use a new one. You have been magnificent. Within days, in some cases within hours, there were COVID-19 resilient support groups springing up everywhere, across the district, from the biggest towns to the smallest villages and hamlets. You stepped up and you showed up. And I hope this is one of the many positive legacies to come out of this awful public health emergency that will last long into the future. You are all legends. One woman we called said she'd never had so much contact from people asking if she was okay. We have on average around 10 to 15 volunteers at the moment for every person in need of support. I believe personally that the economy won't recover to full strength until people have recovered to their full strength. The main thing I would like to get across to you today is that please don't be too proud to ask for help. Everyone at some point in their life needs a little help. Believe me, I know how hard it is to ask for it. You may well have been perfectly self-sufficient and independent your entire life, but these are not normal times. Circumstances change. Please, please, please know that people are there for you. We are in this together. There are more people wanting to help than are being used at the moment, so if you ask, there will be someone there to help or catch you before you fall. Experience from past disasters teaches us that we should expect more of each other. Many people and businesses here in the Cotswolds took the lead on social distancing measures in their businesses, events and personal lives way before the government officially implemented them. Given clear guidance of the best thing to do, most of us try to do it. So I want to say a huge thank you to everyone involved in getting us through this pandemic, whether that's by working in frontline services, the NHS, food shops, farming, in your parish councils, supporting the voluntary sector by volunteering or simply donating cash, supporting your neighbours with shopping, lending an ear to those who want to talk, and putting up with extra garden waste or simply staying at home. Everyone is doing their bit. So again, a big, fat thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, for that update. And me from the, as leader of the council and on behalf of the whole council, I thank you for everything that you've been doing with your team. We've been featuring on the show over the past few weeks. We've seen examples in Tetbury, Bourton on the Water. We're hearing from Stow later on in the show about what's happening across the Cotswolds. It's inspirational, isn't it? And I know that you're very, you can see now you're clearly moved by the sort of the efforts that that residents have put in. So, Jenny, we'll come back to you in a little bit. Give you a chance to have a sip of water. But thank you for that. Thank you for that update. We're going to go now to some questions submitted in advance to our friends from the police. But before we head to the questions, I'm going to give Rich and I'm going to give Simon just an opportunity to sort of introduce themselves, what they do, a bit of an update. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Yeah,
there we go, Rich.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rich Pegler. I'm the Chief Inspector for our 4 rural neighbourhood teams and neighbourhood districts. So that's the Cotswolds, the Forest of Dean, Tewkesbury and Stroud. And I'm also the Constabulary Lead for Rural and Wildlife Crime. And if I can just take a couple of minutes to explain to you how we've changed, how we've been working in recent weeks, just to tackle with the COVID issue. Ultimately, our objective is to keep our communities safe from harm, and that's absolutely the focus of policing at the minute. And some of the things that we've done to enable us to achieve that were to make some sort of quite agile and nimble decisions around how we deliver policing. So we've made absolute sort of optimum use of our police estate. So we're now working right across the county, moving our departments and resources right through Gloucestershire to add to our resilience, which has been of great benefit. At the minute, we have around 4% of the workforce off, which is a very low number of people, which enables us to deliver our very best service to yourselves. One of the other changes we made were to merge our response and local investigation teams. So we now have a super shift. Those shifts are 12 hours. So we've put officers onto 12-hour shifts, days and nights, to make sure that we can police the county effectively. And again, that adds to our resilience. Our citizens in policing team, that's our policing volunteers. They've provided a fantastic response to us. And just to give you some sort of indication as to how much of a contribution they've made since the COVID period, they have provided in excess of 7,000 hours of voluntary work, and that's our special constables in the main. They've been absolutely magnificent in what they've provided in support to the regular colleagues and also to our communities. We've also set up a safeguarding and vulnerabilities team. So that team has come together from existing officers. Those are school beat officers, police officers who go into our schools to look after our children, and from current vulnerabilities officers who work within each of our 6 neighbourhood policing districts. So they have additional training and skill and awareness that's been now put to good use in tackling the issues that go on behind closed doors, which we mustn't lose sight of. So again, children at risk and domestic abuse, which is sort of prevalent during this period. The neighbourhood teams, well, you've seen them out and about. You've seen some great tweets, I'm sure, from the neighbourhood staff right across the county, policing open space, making sure that people are doing the right thing. And again, our approach to this is very much within the Pelian principles of sort of supporting the community and just nudging the public the right way, really. We haven't had a heavy-handed approach to enforcement. We very much implemented the 4Es approach to policing that's come out nationally. So we engage, we explain, we encourage people to do the right thing, and I think that's absolutely the right way to go. And then, unfortunately, where it's absolutely necessary, we enforce. So that's we are as a force. If I can just hand on to Simon now, we might be able to give you some sort of local context.
Simon, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Joe and Jenny. Thank you for having us. If I just echo your words of thanks to all the key workers, and I just want to say I'm the local policing inspector for the Cotswolds, so one of the 4 rural areas within the constabulary, and my role on a day-to-day basis is to oversee the policing in the district. The boundaries of the district are we pretty much follow the lines of the council, district council, so we cover all the way from Tetbury up to Mickleton up in the north. So it's a large area, but that's very much my role on a day-to-day business. Just to add a bit further to what Richard said in terms of context, very much a big part of our work has been doing the open spaces patrol, encouraging the respect to the social distancing, and I won't be ashamed to reiterate the 4Es again. It's about engaging, explaining, encouraging. We really need the public to come on board with us and help us through this difficult time. And I'd just like to thank the vast majority of people up and down the district have been absolutely amazing, have been really, really compliant, and I would really like to thank everyone for that. Like with anything the police get involved with, there's always a small minority who have caused us a few issues. And just to put in a bit of context, we have issued in the Cotswolds only 19 tickets for offences. So that really puts into some good context where we are. But it's good to be here and looking forward to answering some questions.
Fantastic. We'll come to questions in a minute. But yeah, just to, I think, echo what you said, residents in the Cotswolds have been really, really good at adhering to social distancing guidelines. As Simon said, there are always some exceptions. And actually, if you follow Cotswold Police on Twitter, I think the Twitter handle is at Cotswolds Police?
At Cotswolds Police, yeah. At
Cotswolds Police. If you're on Twitter, do go and follow that, because it provides some really good updates, and quite humorous updates about what Simon and Rich and their teams have been dealing with. There are some remarkable instances recently, aren't there, where, I think Bybury at the weekend, you had visitors from Enfield and Birmingham all over the place.
So Bybury there was 9, we issued in a matter of one day in Bybury, we issued 9 tickets.
Wow.
Which was disappointing, and, quite frankly, we were a bit astonished, really. There was people from all over the country who'd come to the Cotswolds. We appreciate the Cotswolds, it's a lovely place, and in normal times we'd absolutely encourage people to come here and enjoy it. But, that Bybury was a particular problem on that day, but we had officers out and about, and 9 tickets were issued, and the message was put across.
Gosh, oh, well done. Okay, well, let's head over to some questions then. So, as I said, I'm going to start with some questions that we've had in advance of this session. We're starting to get a few on the live stream. So if you've got a question, please pop it in the comments section below this video, and it should pop up on my screen, and we'll make sure that we get round to as many as we possibly can. So the first one is from Yasmin Pollard in Cirencester, who asked a question via Facebook. She said, I often walk my dog around 4 acres, which is part of Cirencester, I'm sure you know, and he's kept on a lead all the time, but a lot of people do not have their dogs on leads, and are often collecting their dog or pulling it away from other people, or indeed, in Yasmin in this case, often invading their social distance. She said, surely your dog should be on lead at this unusual time. Who wants to...
Yeah, I'll take that, Joe. Yeah, absolutely. The law is quite clear. If you're walking your dog in a public place, it should always be under control. And absolutely, the recommendation is that should be on a lead. Clearly, there will be times when dogs won't be on leads, but I think given the, everyone's a little bit on edge at the moment, a little bit aware of personal space. So my plea would be absolutely keep your dog on a lead unless absolutely necessary not to. And it's just about respecting others' personal space. And I know, obviously, there's lots of dogs in the Cotswolds, lots of lovely places to walk, but please do keep them on a lead.
Thank you, Simon. We've had quite a few questions about speeding today. We know it's an issue anyway, in peacetime, let's call it, where before the pandemic sort of hit. But I think particularly at the minute, though, as the roads are clearer, perhaps people are taking a bit more of a risk, some individuals. So we've got Chris Whaley in Stow. We've got we've got Alex Hinton in Lechlade. Adrian Benny in Blockley have all asked a similar question. Becky Eddles in Blockley have all asked similar questions about speeding. So what are you guys doing about speeding, and what can you do, and what can communities do to try and improve this? Because it's often a bit of a puzzle, isn't it, in terms of the county are responsible for putting in cameras, that sort of thing. So
yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, it's like you said, even before the COVID pandemic came in, one thing, I've been in the Cotswolds about 10 months now, it's one thing I've noticed, that all the public meetings, a lot of feedback I get when I speak into the public is speeding is a massive issue in the Cotswolds. So just to give a bit of context, I think partly because there's a lot less traffic on the road, I think people are noticing more vehicles, and there are some hotspots in up and down the district where speeding is an issue. A few things. We have roads policing team who are in the Cotswolds on a daily basis. We have our local officers who very much target known speeding hotspots. So what I would do, I appreciate at the moment lots of things going on in terms of open space patrol, but if there is a problematic area, then you must get a hold of your local neighbourhood officer and report it. Okay? And that's really, really important. But we also run a community speed watch scheme, which is very much about the local communities monitoring and raising awareness within those communities about the speed issues. And we found that particularly in areas like Bolton, for example, that's been really, really useful about local residents educating and raising awareness locally to us. So I appreciate it's an issue. It was an issue before the pandemic started. I understand it's an issue now, but my advice would be please, everyone, keep to the speed limits, but if there is a particular problem, please report it to your local neighbourhood officer. Okay,
we've got a question here from Lily. This is via Facebook. I'm currently down in Devon visiting my sister and was there before lockdown went into place. I've been stuck here since then, not knowing whether I'm allowed to return to my home in Cirencester, where I live on my own. Can you offer me some advice?
Do you want me to take
that? Rich, you want to take that? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult time for families, particularly families that are split and divided. And sorry, I don't know if we got the age of that individual.
I don't have the age.
Okay.
I assume she's an adult.
Yeah. What I would say is you take a pragmatic approach within the guidance that's been given. If you feel that you would be better off and better supported, and from a health perspective, if you think you would feel better by being with your family, then I think then you can justify that trip. I think if you are happy that you can look after yourself where you are, and you have everything you need, then again the advice would be to stay put. There's a little bit of a grey area there, but again it's about again, do the right thing, and I think that the individual will know what the answer is.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Got one from Amanda Davies in Bourton via Facebook. This is on behalf of somebody else. So a friend of hers called John asks, I would like to know the definition of essential. Rich, do you want to give us a stab on that one? That's
essential. What is essential? I mean, that's been much public debate, isn't it? You know, what's essential is a trip to a hardware store to get plumbing supplies to fix your toilet or your heating. Is that essential? Is going to get paint and a paintbrush essential? I think, from my perspective, as a police officer, we're not here to police people's morals. I don't believe that's the right thing to do. So again, and with the risk of sort of repeating myself, I think ask yourself the question: is that trip absolutely necessary and essential? There's some examples within the guidance as to what is considered essential, and there's a whole raft of them that I'd have to read from a sheet if we wanted to go into them, but they're publicly available, so people can have a read of those to see what constitutes an essential trip. And in essence, it's essentially is about exercise, it's about food, it's about medical supplies, and it's about looking after the vulnerable. That's what essential really is. But there's a little bit of grey in there.
Thanks, Rich. I've got one here from Leanne Launchbury on Facebook. A number of people have emailed Gloucestershire Police with a response to a shout-out or notifying of an offence, but often hear nothing back. We know you are busy, but could a simple auto response saying "message received" let us know that the email has at least reached you? Do you want to, Richard?
Thank you, Joe. So, I mean, that's something, to be fair, that we've had across the county. That feedback has been given to me 2 or 3 times in recent months. So thank you for that. Take it on board. I'll go back and I'll speak to the teams and to our communications and engagement department to see what we can do there, whether there's an IT fix or whether actually is a little bit about us taking a little bit of time and putting sort of some personal effort into thanking those that are responding to our appeals, whether it's missing persons or appeals to track a suspect for a crime or for information for a crime. Quite right, sometimes we overlook that and we overlook the thank you. So thank you for the nudge. We will keep working for you to get better at that.
Thanks, Rich. And I think, the point goes, often, the council have processes in place that perhaps aren't 100% or don't make the user experience, totally amazing, as will the police. Quite often we're dealing with big organisations and there's lots of automated forms, etc. So get in touch. I think that's the best thing you can do. If you think something needs improving, if it's the council, get in touch with me or Jenny or your local councillor. Let us know. If it's the police as well, contact them obviously on non-emergency numbers and let us know, because if we don't know about a problem that a resident's having, we can't do anything about it. So make sure you do that. We've got a couple more questions. Before we go to an update on the waste, we'll take a couple more questions for you guys, and then we'll go for an update on waste, and we'll take some questions. We're going to be joined live on the line. So what we'll do, we'll have Liz Roberts in Lechlade. We've had 2 young men fishing on our grounds, where there is plenty of signage saying no fishing. When approached and asked to leave for 3 reasons, A, lockdown, B, closed season for fishing, and C, private land, they become very verbally abusive. The police were called and attended, but the men had driven off before they got there. We suspect that they will return. How should we deal with this going forward? We cannot block the entrance with chains as we are delivering food for the vulnerable and elderly. Simon, do you want to...
Yeah, well, report it to us. We were discussing before the broadcast today about, the message in terms of contact us, and there's no definitive answer to it. If members of the public will know, if they feel it needs warranted to contact us, then please do give us a call. Clearly, if people are being abusive, then that's not nice. But it's people will know whether to call us. Don't start locking fences and things like that, because people just climb over them. So it's really down to the individual. But don't put yourself in a position where you feel you might potentially be in the end of some abuse. But just report it to us, and we can take a look.
Absolutely. Thanks, Simon. And before we go for a waste update, let's take a question from Amanda Ball, who lives in Kemble. I fully support lockdown measures, but would like to ask, one aspect of the stay-at-home guidance that isn't clear. On one hand, groups of 2 or more, not from the same household, can be dispersed, which implies two people practicing social distancing could meet. However, the exercise guidance says to go out only with those from the same household. I believe it could make a huge difference to people's mental health if it was acceptable to run, walk or cycle with a friend, therapist or support worker. Whatever the case, of course, distancing guidance would be adhered to, and not talking about individuals from published vulnerable groups. She's also asked, will this be live and recorded and available afterwards? Yes, it will. Again, Rich, probably go to you. We talked about that grey area, didn't we? And there are probably a few of those.
I mean, the reality is, within the spirit of the legislation as it currently is, we can't do that. I think there's some really fair comment in there. I'm a runner myself. I love getting out for a run. And at the minute, the only person I can run with is my wife. That's not a bad thing, I hasten to add.
I'm sure she's pleased to hear.
She's a lovely person. Yeah. So I get the conundrum. But the reality is that that's what the law says at the minute. So, and again, I suppose I apply our principles of how we're policing this. So I don't think anyone is going to get a ticket or prosecuted for that. They may well get some words of advice and be asked not to do that. So at the minute, our stance would be, if we were to speak to two people who weren't from the same household that were running together, is actually you shouldn't be doing that. That's our advice. That's my advice as I'm sat here. It might be that in further weeks, months time, there's a slight relaxation and we might be able to have a different conversation. But that's currently where we're at. I think there's a really important point within that actually taking exercise and getting outside is really good for people's mental health and well-being. So I would say to the community, please, take your exercise, take that time outdoors. It will hopefully make you feel better.
Thank you, Rich. We're going to go now to an update on the bins. Waste is the big issue at the minute, as we all know, and particularly, I know it's been a cause of much concern for many residents, is the suspension of the garden waste service, particularly owing to the warm weather that we've had. We should have Andy Doherty on the line, who is our Cabinet Member for Waste and Recycling here in the Cotswolds. Andy, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Joe.
Marvellous. Andy, thanks so much for joining us. And as I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear, we've had lots and lots of comments about waste and recycling and the garden service. So, Andy, do you just, before we go into the questions, do you want to give us just a bit of a general update on the waste and recycling service and where we're at as of this week and the next week?
Okay, I think to avoid kind of repeating some of the things I've said before, maybe talk a bit more about where we are in terms of the process of particularly getting things like garden waste back up and running again. So if you think about it, we basically had kind of 3 stages to run through. Our first stage for us was cope, as simple as that, in terms of coping with the sudden rise in absences we had at the same time as we were rolling out changes to the service, which had planned and were in train and needed to happen for all sorts of reasons behind the scenes. So that coping stage is where we were to begin with. That was tricky, that was difficult, that was problems for lots of people, problems for the staff, problems for residents, all sorts of different things. But we've run through that process. Where we have got to now is kind of a process of stabilisation. So that's about getting the core services, so the ones we are required to do, back to functioning well, getting things like calls into the customer service call centres back to a more normal level so that we can have people doing various of the other jobs that need doing, like the grant applications that have been talked about before. And then particularly make sure we're not missing particular locations. And that's, for example, people like those with assisted collections, those are vulnerable, making sure we're not missing any of them, and then picking up those places where we've obviously got a problem with new crews perhaps finding things and making sure that they're picking up those locations and not missing them on a regular basis. And we kind of get in towards the end of that stabilised process, and that leads us into a process of working out how to restore things. Now, at the minute, the only thing we've actually had to cut is the garden waste service, which I know is a big thing for lots of people, particularly with the weather being as it has been for the last few weeks. So the process we're going through now is to work out how to fix the problems with the service that have stopped us around the garden waste service. so we can get that back up and running again. So it's that restore phase that we're trying to move into at the minute, and that's become possible because we're now having a lot fewer service failures where we know we've got problems collecting things, and we've got some people free to pick up some of the difficult collections and assisted collections that have got missed over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And we've got some people now free from the customer services normal phone calls who can sit down and go through why are these things not working and how do we fix them and how do we get them working reliably again. And as we do all those things, we've got a good base to build on and get the services back up and running again.
Thanks, Andy. We'll jump into some questions that we've had in advance, and then we'll go to some of the live ones. Andy, what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask you to stay on the line after we've taken some of these questions, because I'm sure we'll get some questions on the waste service coming through as we go along in response to what you've said. So if we can keep you on the line for as long as possible, that'd be fantastic. First one from Chris in Stow Ward. Please can we have updates on refuse collectors throwing empty food bins on the floor, white and blue bags blowing away as they're not being put back properly? This is particularly an issue in Stow Ward. Some of the public bins on Stow Ward also haven't been emptied, and now there's rubbish blowing through Stow. So yeah, Andy, back to you.
Okay, public waste bins, roadside bins, we've got a reduced team of people doing that because there is less being produced generally at the minute, but there are going to be some bins that are probably high trafficked, dog walking areas, those kinds of things. Simple answer is go on the website and report them. We've got a reduced service doing the collections, but we still do have people out doing the collections of those roadside and parish bins. So someone will be out to go and pick that up, and they shouldn't get to a point where they're overflowing. So if you see one, please let us know. In terms of things the crews are doing, then that's again one that we need to pick up on and need to do something about. It's probably more of a problem where we've got temporary crews in. On any given day, we'll have about 87 people out, drivers and loaders, doing work in 33 to 34 vehicles. So there's a lot of people out and about doing the collection service each day. Of those, about 1 in 5 of them will be temporary workers. They're inducted, but they're not always people who've worked for us before, and perhaps they're not getting it right. There's very clear instructions for the crews under the new service about how to put the containers back together neatly and tidily so things don't blow about. So if we're not following that, we need to know about it, and then we can pick it up.
Okay, let's take next question we've got is from Valerie Fletcher on Facebook. Do you think as a temporary measure it might be worthwhile considering combining the food waste and the garden waste together again as one collection, as we were doing prior to the new recycling system? Last week we saw the garden waste collection truck going around collecting the food waste. It seemed crazy that it was driving past all those green garden waste bins knowing they were in need of being emptied. Andy?
Welcome to the madness of the UK waste service. So the practical problem there is the actual decision about separating wasn't per se ours. Gloucestershire County Council, it actually does the disposal of the waste. And we introduced food a long time ago in the Cotswolds along with garden waste. And at that time, pretty much the only option was to combine them. Gloucestershire County Council had to process that, and that was fairly expensive. That needs a particular type of process to make sure it's composted and sterile away. They're not doing that anymore, and that's actually the main driver for why the service was changing in the first place. So it's not possible for us to combine food and garden waste. If I give you an example, we had an accidentally combined lorry load of stuff, and if Gloucestershire had chosen to charge us for that, that would have been £1,000 straight off for a single lorry load, because that can go neither to the garden waste composting facility nor to the food processing facility. It has to go into landfill. So that now that behind the scenes infrastructure has all changed, and it's what the rest of the county is doing, we're now in line with what everyone else does. It's not possible to go back and make a change on that. And because we delayed our original service launch from November because it wasn't ready, the county had already helped us out by extending the current service for a few months, but that's now gone and we're into the new system full stop.
Okay, we've got one here. Andy, just a quick one before I read this next question out. You've been the cabinet member nearly a year now. Before you started doing this, how much did you know about bins and waste? Because I imagine it's probably been quite an education, hasn't it?
Yeah, deep dive. I have always had an interest in recycling, and as my colleagues on the council know, I'm quite nerdy. I love to know how things work. But this has been an education in terms of understanding waste services and what the small print is behind the scenes. it might look relatively simple in the future. You only ever see a little part of the vast machine that's going on behind the scenes. It really is surprisingly complex, and there are some quite amazing logistical challenges for people working in waste in the UK. And I take my hats off to those who are having to do it every day and are out there with their metaphorical hands in the waste all the time.
Yeah. I can see our backroom team sort of putting their hands together. Absolutely, you're totally right. This is from Graham Taylor in Cirencester. Given that the lockdown is being treated as gardening leave by those lucky enough to have gardens, the suspension of garden waste collections means that the garden waste is beginning to pile up. Some local authorities are resuming waste collections and adding extra collections too, because residents are resorting to bonfires, not encouraged and likely to cause problems for the fire service, and fly tipping. Does Cotswold District Council envisage resuming collections in the foreseeable future? Andy, a question that a lot of people have asked and a lot of people are asking: when are we likely to see the garden waste service resuming?
Okay, so there's been various random dates, and I was helping someone out in my local area the other day, and they were informing me when the garden waste service was going to be running again, which was interesting news to me. So the key thing is there are no set dates at the minute, but the schedule we're working to is on the order of weeks, not months. So at the minute, in that three-step process I talked about, what we're actually doing at the minute is we're working out how to deal with the particularly food capacity problems that we've got. One of the previous questions was talking about seeing the garden waste lorries, or what you think of as being the big traditional bin lorries, the 26-ton ones with the squashing mechanism at the back, seeing those collecting food. And that's to help us cope with the capacity problems that we've had on other vehicles. We're working through changing some of the vehicles and then testing that literally at the minute. Those are out and about and being used this week. Once we've established what works, we can roll that out across the wider fleet, and then we free up those vehicles to get garden waste going again. The key thing we do not want to do is we don't want to start it and then have the whole thing fall apart again. That doesn't help anybody. It's no good for residents. We're not able to give a guarantee what service is going on. There are other authorities locally also been trying to restart the services and haven't been able to. And there's a couple of authorities that are running kind of a best effort service, and that causes then problems with people ringing up because they don't know whether they were supposed to get a garden waste collection or not. So we want to try and be consistent and clear for people, and that's the reason why we're bringing the service back in the way that we are at the minute. But it's all about that, how do we fix the service problems we've got on the core service, because we can't have things like food being left around. That's obviously a worse situation than leaving garden waste around. Pick those up, deal with those, and then garden waste back up and going again. What we will do with people is, once we've got a degree of confidence in when we can relaunch, we'll talk about that, we'll talk about the process, and we'll be clear with people when they can expect to start see that coming back in their area.
Thanks, Andy. We'll come back to you, Andy, in a bit. We're getting a trickle of questions through about waste, all sorts of questions about waste. So we'll come back to you shortly. We're going to head now to a pre-recorded segment I did earlier with Councillor Dilys Neill. Dilys is the District Councillor for Stow on the Wold, for the Swells and Morgasbury, up in the North Cotswolds, and she provided us with a bit of an update about what's been happening in her community. We're joined now by Councillor Dilys Neill, who represents Stow on the Wold and the Swells on Cotswold District Council, and is a great colleague and friend of mine and works very hard for her community. Dilys, how are you, first of all?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Dilys, can you just give us a bit of an overview of what's happening up in Stow and in your area of the North Cotswolds?
Yes, you missed out Morgasbury, by the way. I represent Stow, Morgasbury and the Swells.
That's unforgivable.
So I need to mention them because I'll be talking mostly about Stow, but there's some great work going on in Morgasbury village and also in the Swells village, where I know that groups have got together to support vulnerable people. So each of the villages has organised their own system, and I know that friends and neighbours are supporting and helping each other in the villages. But I'll be talking mostly about Stow because obviously that's the biggest.
Let's on that then. Let's start with Stow. So yeah, give us an update. What's happening in Stow?
Okay, so Stow got off pretty quickly as soon as the lockdown started. So Heather, our wonderful town clerk, and her assistant, the deputy clerk, Liz, got a large group of volunteers together. It was amazing, the response, right at the beginning of the lockdown. And they delivered forms to every house in Stow. And then they went round a day or two later to collect them, so that this meant that people who went online could fill in either if they were willing to volunteer, or they could fill in if they needed help, and they gave their details across to us, and so that filled all the GDPR requirements. So that was pretty successful, I think, but there was a big response, an enormous number of volunteers, needless to say, wanting to help, but also quite a lot of people who needed support with shopping, collecting prescriptions, etc. And so that's all now been handed across to Cotswold Friends, so it's such a great organisation, because they've got more people to deal. It was quite an overwhelming task for one person to deal with. So Cotswold Friends are now running our volunteer system for us. So people can call into them if they need help and support, and then they'll supply them with a volunteer.
Fantastic.
And I think that's working pretty well. When I've been ringing round people just to make sure they know about the system and they know about the Gloucestershire Community Help Hub as well, I've found that a lot of people have said, oh, I'm fine, and my neighbours or my friends are helping me. So that's been amazingly heartwarming to know that people are just on the case, knowing who their vulnerable neighbours are and getting out there to help them. I'm not going to name names because there's so many different people doing it. Some of them are bordering on the vulnerable themselves, but people have been so willing to help, and it's been lovely to hear it. But just one small example I can give you is that the allotment holders, there's a very well-functioning group in Stow, and one of their members was ill and self-isolating and not able to do her allotment. So I've heard that other members of the allotment group, socially distancing, of course, have been out and kept her allotment looking nice for her, so it'll be there for her when she returns. But it's all that sort of stuff that's going on that the community is all pulling together.
So is that just in Stow, or is that in the villages as well? Is it?
In the villages, yeah. The allotments is just Stow, but in the villages, the friends and neighbours are out supporting each other. There are sort of buddy organisations so people can ring in, but also I know that just on an informal basis, people are calling up their neighbours and saying, "Can I help?" Which is really, really good. Yeah. In terms of Stow again, then. Some of the shops have started offering a delivery service. So the butcher and the paper shop and other shops have been offering to supply food or collect food and deliver it to people. So that's all amazing. There's a community Facebook group, which was already in existence, but that's been amazingly useful, I think, and a WhatsApp group, and that's run by Simon and Nikki. So that's a good way of posting out information and also requests. Our vicar Martin and his wife are delivering online services for people who want to participate, and they're also very much aware that not everybody is online, so they've been delivering paper copies of the service and also phoning people who don't have computers, and I think that service of getting in touch with people who aren't online is really crucial. I should mention our marvellous school, Stow Primary School. I think you might be going to talk to Rebecca Scott, our headmistress, on another occasion, so I won't go into great detail about what the teachers are doing. But just they're trying to make things as normal as possible for the children and trying to keep the children engaged and excited. So doing things like having the regular Star of the Week, the regular awards. Mrs. Scott has a celebration assembly where she mentions the children who've sent in really good work or really good examples of things they're doing. And so that goes out to keep the children engaged and supported and feel that their education is important. There's also a parent support worker who works for the school, helping, and she's extra busy at this particular time, as you can imagine, helping families that are finding difficulties educating their children at home, or maybe who've lost a lot of income. So she's very busy helping. Free school meals are being delivered by taxi, which is very welcome, apparently. And even the cleaners are going into the school just to make sure the building remains okay while it's closed. So everybody's putting their weight in the school. And then finally, the town council work has to continue, looking forward to a time beyond lockdown. So there's things, for example, like the neighbourhoods planning group. They'd just been getting a consultation process together before the lockdown started about a draft neighbourhood plan. And they're still working on that so that hopefully they can sort of hit the ground running as soon as the lockdown is finished.
Fantastic. Dilys, it sounds like there's a real coming together of the community. I know Stow and the surrounding villages have really strong communities anyway, from visiting and coming to visit you and going around. And it just seems like it's put that even more sharply into focus during the lockdown. Just finally, what would your sort of message be for those constituents who you represent in your ward, and actually with your sort of hat on as a former GP in the area? What would your sort of message be to residents? Obviously, it's been a long haul, hasn't it? Over a month now. What would your sort of parting message to residents be?
I'd just like to say. I know how very hard it is for people to be locked down. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've got a big garden and lovely views. And I know for some people who are locked down in maybe a smaller house or a flat with their children, it's much harder. But you're doing your bit for the country and you're doing your bit for the NHS by staying at home under lockdown. So I just want to say well done. And I want to say, stick with it. If your role in this crisis is to stay at home, stay at home. And I want to thank all the amazing people who volunteered. I mean, such a lot of good people have come forwards in this crisis. And let's hope that after the lockdown ends, that the fantastic community spirit that's been generated will continue. But I'm just saying, I know it's hard, but stick with the lockdown, stick with it, and just well done to everybody who's been so marvellous at helping their friends and neighbours.
Well, Dilys, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for the effort that you're playing in helping to lead the volunteer effort up in the North Cotswolds. We really appreciate it, and I know residents on the ground do too. So, Dilys, thank you very much for joining us.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Dilys Neill there, District Councillor for Stow, the Swells and Morgansbury, doing great work up in the North Cotswolds. Jenny, you touched on it when you were last on the show. I think it's probably 2 or 3 weeks ago now. Domestic abuse. We've read about it sort of nationally. It's been in the news a bit. Sort of domestic abuse and domestic violence going up as people have sort of been confined to their homes. What's the sort of situation in the Cotswolds?
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for raising it. It still remains the single greatest cause of harm in our society, and we are concerned actually in the Cotswolds that we are not reflecting the general picture of there being a spike in people reporting and accessing support. And we think the very reasons that it goes on for longer undetected in rural areas is the reason that it's actually being exacerbated by the lockdown. So people are not perhaps accessing the support services as usual, and people at home are putting up with it. We suspect they might be playing it down, keeping the peace, suffering in silence. And one of our partners, GDAS, the Gloucestershire Domestic Abuse and Support Service, have said to us that they are very concerned. They're expecting a spike as we start to come out of the lockdown, and they want to remind people that all of the support services that were there before the lockdown still exist. And also, Simon, if I can pass to you, I know that the police are still very keen that people report and come forward and access the support from yourselves as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Yeah, echo everything you've said. We have seen a slight increase in the reports of domestic abuse, but it's really, really important, as you mentioned. I know it's something which we talk about in the Community Safety Partnership most weeks, about the importance of people reporting. So from our point of view, we're very much open for business as usual, and it's really, really important that if you are the victim or you feel like you need some support, then you must report domestic abuse issues to us. And as you've mentioned, there's lots of advice on the Constabulary social media channels, but GDAS is a great reference point as well. And I would just like to point out on Monday the 4th, we have our mobile police station coming to the district, and there'll be a representative from GDAS there, as well as police officers and PCSOs. So I'm just going to refer to my notes. So on Monday the 4th, between 9:30 and 11:30 in Waitrose in Cirencester Town, and then the same afternoon in Tesco's in Stow between 12:30 and 2:30. So please do get in contact. There's support there for you.
Thank you. So, as Simon said, all sorts of support available, and if you suspect somebody is a victim of domestic abuse, do report it. If you've got any doubts, please make sure you do that. It could save a life. Other support is also available across the Cotswolds on a whole range of issues. One group that we're focusing on particular today is Cotswold Citizens Advice Bureau. All the time, not just during the coronavirus lockdown, but for years and years, over 80 years, Citizens Advice have provided citizens with advice on a number of issues, ranging from help with their finances, filling out forms, etc., etc. I spoke earlier to Elizabeth Hall from Citizens Advice here in the Cotswolds. We're joined by Elizabeth Hall now from Cotswolds Citizens Advice Bureau. Elizabeth, welcome. Good to have you on.
Thank you for having me on.
So, Elizabeth, for our residents watching today, can you just give us a brief overview of what the Citizens Advice Bureau does? Because it's one of those services we often hear about, but many people won't have engaged with you and might not know what you do.
No, that's absolutely true, Joe. So we were established, Citizens Advice nationally was established in 1939 as a sort of an emergency war service. So it sort of seems quite apt now, doesn't it, that we're still here, sort of 81 years later. We are actually a local charity, so a lot of people don't know that. So when you're phoning our helpline, although it's a free phone number, you are actually speaking to somebody either in Stroud or Cotswolds, because we work as a sort of dual office, as it were. We help people with all sorts of aspects that they might be, difficulties they're facing in their lives, from claiming benefits, are they getting all they're entitled to, housing, debt, employment, consumer issues, have they been victim of scams, just really sort of all sorts of things, energy, all the sort of things that you have issues with in your daily lives, really. Normally, we see people face to face. We have an office in Cirencester and then outreach in Tetbury and Moreton in Marsh. Unfortunately, obviously, we've had to close that face to face, but we have telephone service that runs from 10 till 4, 5 days a week. As I say, it's free phone, and you can actually email us as well for email advice.
Fantastic. So, Elizabeth, clearly the lockdown, we've been under lockdown now for what, just over a month or so.
That's right.
Of course, like everybody, this has presented new challenges. What have the challenges been for you guys at CAB? You've sort of mentioned that the face-to-face interaction has had to cease. But what are the sort of things that you're seeing coming forward? What are residents raising with you, and how have you sort of adapted to work with that?
Okay, so in terms of sort of adapting, obviously, yes, we were, sort of used to sort of about half our clients coming in face to face, and that had to stop. That presented its own challenges because we weren't really set up for remote working as we are, or for our telephone systems to be diverted. But with an enormous amount of effort from staff and volunteers, we've actually managed to divert the system. And our volunteers are now advising from the comfort of their own homes. So that's been great. We've actually managed to, fairly seamlessly, with a lot of effort, roll out the system so it's fully remote. We have seen a huge increase in the number of benefits, sort of inquiries that we're getting. That might be people who are suddenly faced with having to claim benefits for the first time. It might be people who are already claiming benefits, but their income's dropped. So, for example, if they're on tax credits or that sort of thing. You can imagine the number of employment calls has been absolutely massive. It's just been huge. And so we've been sort of dealing with that. And that's one thing that we're really good at Citizens Advice, is that holistic aspect of things. So when a client calls, says, I have a problem with my employment, I'm being furloughed, we're able to then offer a benefits check. We're able to say, are you going to be able to sort of meet your outgoings? So we can look at all aspects. It's not just saying, oh, let me give you employment advice. We can cover sort of the other implications for them.
So a really, really, really difficult time, and as you mentioned, you see sort of face to face. How would you, if somebody's watching that perhaps need help, what's the best way to get hold of you at the minute? Is it via email, or the website, telephone? What's the best way?
I think really it's up to them. I mean, obviously, what we're really conscious of is there are parents who've got children at home who might be struggling to sort of make that contact on the telephone. It's not always easy with small children around to make calls, so you can email in, but it's really whatever is best for the client. Obviously, sometimes even if they do email in, we still have to call because there might be sort of pieces of information that we need to give full advice. But we can sort of accommodate whichever is best for clients. Really, we are working and being inventive. So when people say, "I've got this letter," sometimes it's, "Well, take a photograph on your phone and email the photograph across to us, and we'll read what the letter said." Sometimes it's saying, "Get your Universal Credit Journal up. Read me what it says," so that we can see or help that way.
And I know, working with you guys since I've been the leader over the past year, I've seen firsthand the valuable work that you do, and the support actually you're given to the district council as well, pointing out where some of our policies could be improved, that sort of thing. And of course, we give you a lump sum, don't we, of money every year in the form of a grant. And I just want to emphasise that this is a service for everybody, isn't it?
Absolutely. It doesn't matter who you are. We're totally independent, impartial, and it's a service for everybody. It really doesn't matter, sort of what your personal circumstances are. And we have a really great bunch of people answering the telephone and people advising who are just there to help. They're good at listening. They're good at understanding what people are going through. And they won't sort of dictate options, what you have to do and advise. It's about saying, look, these are your options. We can help you sort of work out what the pros and cons are. Should you take a payment holiday? Should you, cut down your expenditure somewhere else? Can we get you a better energy deal? Can we improve your situation by maximising your income? So it really is a question of being able to present people with options that they can then make that choice about.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for that brief but comprehensive update, which I hope residents will find useful. And just a big thank you from me and everybody at the council, and actually all residents, for the work that you guys are doing on the front line. We know how hard you guys are working in really, really difficult circumstances. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Right, we come to the section of the show now where we take your live questions and answered. We've had a few technical difficulties, so if you submitted a question before 10 to 4 and it hasn't been answered already, resubmit it, because we just had a bit of a technical issue. But what we'll do, I'll go from sort of 10 to 4, the question we sort of had since then, and we'll try and get through as many. We've nearly approaching an hour, which just shows we're having so much fun that we've sort of gone over time. But I can see the guys at the back here, Chris and Ben, are signalling that we can continue for a little bit longer. So we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. Right, first one, Callum Jones wants to ask our colleagues here from the Constabulary. As I've witnessed people breaking social distancing rules and reported them, will anything have been done, as I've not seen or heard anything from the authorities? That's from Callum in Moreton in Marsh. Simon, do you want to?
Like I mentioned earlier, we have issued 19 tickets across the district. I don't quite know what Callum's referring to in relation to that, but as I mentioned earlier, our approach is very much about raising awareness, engaging and encouraging people to adhere to the regulations. But when incidents are reported to us, the vast majority are being attended and they all get notified to us. So, if people feel the need to report incidents to us, then I would actively encourage them to do so. I don't know, Rich, if you've got anything to add on that.
Yeah, I think just to sort of be honest and add some context, we've had periods of peaks and troughs of demand. So in high demand periods, we may not get to as many incidents as ideally we would like to. And the incidents are subject to sort of a threat, risk and harm assessment. Really, it's about what's going on and is there risk to life, or is it repeat offending and repeat poor behaviour? So those are the kind of things that might influence whether an incident is resourced and attended or not. And it could be the simple fact that there could be other more pressing incidents that are taking the resources there and then and we're having to deal with other emergency incidents.
Okay.
So I'm sorry if we didn't get to that one, but we where there's risk to public and where there's repeat poor behaviour, we will look to attend those incidents.
Absolutely. Jenny Scarsbrook, up in the North Cotswolds, talking about, I'm sure you're aware, travellers have arrived at Evenlode. Have you got a bit of an update on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, thanks, Joe. Yeah, fully aware of. We've had 3 or 4 reports from local members of the community about travellers arriving just north of the village. Colleagues of mine up in the based at Stow have gone there, and we've spoken with them. I have spoken with colleagues in Gloucestershire County Council, and very much at the moment, due to obviously the COVID lockdown regulations, we're not actively seeking to move them on because potentially that might actually spread potential viruses and just move the problem on elsewhere. But I am conscious that there has been a bit of concern locally. So we're very much about engaging and speaking with them. All parties have been spoken to. I've also spoken to the landowner. So the larger group, there's 2 groups out there. The larger group are actually on a privately owned field. I've spoken with a landowner this morning, and that was a very useful conversation. So we're very much engaging with the group. In terms of some questions which have been asked to me previously about are they breaching social distancing regulations, as Richard said, it's in terms of living in caravans, it's a bit of a grey area because that is their home. So there are practicality difficulties in terms of issuing tickets if we felt that was necessary. So we're fully aware, we're engaging, and it's work in progress.
Great, thanks, Samson. Andy, are you still there? We've got a question about waste. Studio to Andy.
I am still here, yeah.
Excellent, fantastic. A voice has just appeared. Fantastic. Andy, we've got a question from Mark Margetts. When will you be reopening the recycling depots, and could you not introduce a 2-metre distance and 1 car in, 1 car out policy? Now, recycling centres are the county council, but I'm sure you have an opinion, and you've been talking to the county council, no doubt.
Oh yeah, everybody's got opinions. There's lots of discussion going on around the know about recycling centres, because again, that's a national problem. Again, in the wacky world of waste, the disposal authority is Gloucestershire, and so Gloucestershire actually runs the household waste recycling centres. They are looking at bringing in reopening of them, but they are doing that cautiously and carefully, because what unsurprisingly they're worried about is having a huge influx of people turning up straight away and all sorts of traffic chaos and carnage ensuing. So that's a difficult logistical exercise for them to work through, but they are doing that. It is also something we are talking to them about in terms of trying to tie it up quite closely, because you've obviously got potentially garden waste going to our service as it restarts, and you've got garden waste going to things like the household recycling centres, and neither side wants to end up with all of that waste coming to it. So it's trying to balance the load. But that's primarily an exercise that the county is dealing with, and liaising as needed with the other districts in Gloucestershire as they look at doing that. I do know the obvious observation is that Cotswold is one of the harder areas because of our rurality and how separated our recycling centre is from most other things. So they view our one as being a tricky one, but they're looking to do them all in one go.
Okay, thanks Andy. I've got another question here from Carol Jeffcock. Surely Stow Fair is cancelled. I don't know.
I'll take that one.
Yep. Rich?
Yeah, so we've had some conversation with representatives of the organisers and with the Travellers Times. The fair is cancelled. The Traveller Times has published the fact that it's been cancelled and has given very sensible and responsible advice to the travelling community. Now, as with any group of people, there's a majority that will listen and follow the advice, and there is maybe a small majority that won't, which is why we may have seen a slight increase in the numbers of travellers in the area of Evenlode. So we're watching the situation really carefully. We've had a number of planning meetings. We will continue to hold weekly planning meetings, and we will adjust our policing response accordingly as we approach the date.
Okay, thank you, gents. Nathan Nazir, any clarification on the council's and the legal stance of the video that emerged of a traffic warden placing a ticket on a pharmacy supply van in Cirencester? I know the video that you're referring to, Nathan, and of course it was disappointing to see a pharmacy van being ticketed. I raised it with the county council, and I understand that the ticket has been declared void. What I would say, though, is that the torrent of abuse that was directed towards the traffic enforcement officer, quite frankly, was vile. That chap is doing his job. You might totally disagree, and you might be really angry that he's giving he or she is giving a ticket to the van. But please go to the people that make the decisions. Go to the councillors at Shire Hall, who are who run the council and who have decided to continue with traffic enforcement on street. At the district council, we have suspended it, but please don't take it out on the operatives on the ground. They are doing their job, and I saw the individual involved. His address was being listed on Facebook. I think the police would have something to say about that.
Yeah,
if they,
well,
do you know about the video?
Yeah, I do actually know. Yeah, we were made aware of the video, Joe, and I can't go into too much detail, but the person who was shouting the abuse will be spoken to.
Okay.
So we're fully aware of that.
Absolutely. So I think the thing to say is, no, it's one of those things. Traffic wardens are not the most popular people in the world, but they are employed by councils. If you've got an issue with the policy, if you've got an issue with the fact a traffic enforcement officer is ticketing a vehicle, go to the councillors that run the council. If you Google Gloucestershire County Council, you'll be able to find who runs the county council. As I said, Jenny and I and our team, we have suspended parking enforcements in the areas that we're responsible for. But there's no excuse for abuse, and particularly the type of abuse that we were seeing, which were amounting to threats. So please go to the correct people if you want to make a complaint, and don't take it out on the operative on the ground. Not necessarily a popular opinion, but the right one. Right, we have got one here from Steve Jones. Community Speedwatch do checks once or twice a month in Stow, and they're not permitted to do them at present. Community Speedwatch, that's something that is run by the county council, I think, but I'm sure you guys are aware of it.
Yeah, so So as I mentioned earlier, actually, in one of the previous questions, Community Speedwatch is very much about local residents identifying, raising awareness of speeding in their community. I think, yeah, at the moment, given the restrictions, it's sensible, obviously, not to happen. But as I mentioned earlier, something we're very much focused on. And as soon as the restrictions, as and when they are lifted, then the members of the community can carry on with those. And we work very closely with these groups. And as I mentioned earlier as well, we do regular speeding checks ourselves.
Okay, thanks Simon. We've got one here from Darren Chavers, and I have a feeling it might have a comic edge to it. Will the Rozzers let me and my mates off doing donuts in Tesco's car parks as we're in lockdown? Simon or Rich, who wants to answer that one?
Simply no.
Yeah, I think right answer.
If he's bringing me a donut, that's okay. But
oh dear, marvellous. Okay. Why does there seem to be an increase in cars in our towns that are not necessarily driving to shops, but just driving through, and some of them are speeding on a pleasure drive? What is deemed the distance they can drive from where they live for them to go to a walk, for example?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one, actually, because that's been, in the media quite a lot, and there's been quite a lot of discussion about that. There is no defined distance, and I would echo what Rich mentioned earlier. It's just a bit about common sense. We talked about Bibury earlier. Driving from St Albans and London to Bibury clearly is not reasonable. So I can't give you a definitive, it's 2 miles or 3 miles. It's down to people's common sense and what they think is reasonable. But there is scope for people to drive to do some local exercise, absolutely, and that's in the guidance which has been published by central government. So again, it's just down to people what they think is the right thing to do, and the vast majority of people will know what is reasonable in those circumstances.
Sure.
If I could just add that, so the latest is the exercise has to be longer than the trip itself. So, for example, if you drive for half hour, your exercise has to be, considerably more than that. So it would have to be, say an hour or so. Again, there's no hard, fast rules. But I think, again, the spirit of the message is take the shortest drive possible to enable you to have your appropriate, type of exercise.
Thanks, Rich. Andy should still be there. I've got a question from Alex Hinton, one we've had before on a previous show. Will there be a rebate for the garden waste service that hasn't been delivered?
Sort of, but the simpler answer is we're not actually charging you for the garden waste service at the minute. I think, contrary to popular belief, oddly, and I don't know why, that's one of the things we'll fix, it's never been run on a direct debit basis. So you have to buy each year. So all of the existing licenses ran out at the 31st of March. And no one has actually been charged for a new license, that will cover the 2020-21 period. Broadly, we'll expect to pro rata it in some way for the fact that there's a reduced service going on with that. But at the minute, you're not actually paying for anything.
I've got a comment here from Carol Jeffcock, and this is something that I've been made aware of, which is really regrettable. Please tell people not to throw grass cuttings into livestock fields. I'm aware that a couple of horses have died because people have dumped some grass clippings. The horses have eaten it and sadly passed away. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that, but certainly something was posted on social media. You know, there's no excuse for fly tipping anything, whether it's garden waste or an old fridge. And just bear in mind that, you know, actions have consequences, and really tragic in this case. I don't know if you wanted to sort of add to that.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that particular instance, but I know, as you mentioned, fly tipping is illegal. It's a criminal offence, and we work very closely with Kevin Lee from the Cotswold District Council to focus on that area. And Kevin is part of our community safety partnership, so I have regular contact with him. But yeah, absolutely echo what you say. People just need to be considerate, you know, in the current climate.
Absolutely. Another one here about speeding. How are we working towards preventing speeding on the quiet roads? We live in a 40-mile-an-hour area, which has turned people, which recently has turned into people driving at closer to 60. Sort of touched on it already, but
yeah, ongoing process. I mean, in terms of, you know, I think you alluded to earlier, Joe, the county council, obviously, in the highways, in terms of they're the ones who ultimately can decide on speed. I know there's a consultation process, so it's not something which the police can suddenly decide, oh, we must change the speed limit in a road. That's not ours. But we work closely with the county council and community speed, as I was mentioned. So it's an ongoing process. But the most important thing is just drop your local neighbourhood officer an email to make them aware.
Mm-hmm. And where can we get details of who those local neighbourhood officers
If you just go on to the Constabulary's website, there's been a national upgrade of the police force's website, and it's really good. Just put in there, put your postcode in, and it will come up with who your neighbourhood officer is.
Okay. One from Sharon Tyler. When is it likely that the garden waste will resume? With no notice given, most are full and starting to smell. I'm going to point you back to earlier in the video. After this broadcast is finished, if you go back to the bin update we gave earlier, Andy addressed that point. So Sharon, if you look at that, and we'll try and repost that on the District Council's page. Joe, we currently have an issue where CDC Food Hygiene Department have advised to involve the police, and the police have advised that it is CDC. Both offer support, but none in practice on the ground. Please look into this. More details available. That's from Amanda. Andy, we'll come back to that after the show, Amanda, and we'll look into that for you. Can you grant extensions to planning acceptances which are coming to the end of 3 years but have been able to develop or sell due to coronavirus? That's from Andrew Wadland. Andrew, I don't know. That's something that I will raise with my colleague, Councillor Clive Webster, who is our cabinet member for planning. And actually, maybe we'll get him onto one of our shows in the next few weeks to answer some questions about planning. Because quite interestingly, the planning process is something that seems to have continued relatively unaffected since the lockdown. I think the government have deemed it an essential service, so that's been sort of happening. Anyways, but I will look into that for you, Andrew, and we will try and get back to you. Clive might even be watching, so he might want to respond to that comment directly. Hasn't the COVID-19, this is from Luke Sherlock in Kemble. Hello, Luke. Hasn't the COVID-19 pandemic illustrated the importance of local accessible green space? It certainly has. With this in mind, do you think you should reconsider building on a considerable part of the Kemble Community Gardens, especially as it's an asset of community value? This is the only community green space in the dense part of the village and has been a lifeline during this pandemic. Luke, we're of course reviewing everything that the council are doing in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we'll be reviewing everything. With respect to the parcel of land that you're talking about, we'll of course review, but I think it's unlikely. We need social rented housing in the Cotswolds, and one of the sites in the site that you refer to in Kemble is ideal for that. Of course, we're only developing a small part of it. The majority of the site will still be a public green space accessible for all. You have my word from the council, and we're working with the community to hand ownership of that over to the community. So yes, a small part of it is likely to be developed for social rented housing, affordable housing, but the vast majority of it will remain as a green space. This is from Maria Eagle. I'm looking at moving. I have uncles that live in the Cotswolds, and they said that it's not a family connection. I would like to come back as I'm a type 1 diabetic and I feel I need to be near my family. Tricky one, and of course can't comment on individual circumstances, but you probably echo what you said earlier.
Yeah, without wishing to repeat myself, I think, have a look at your circumstances, put your health and well-being at the forefront of that and make the right decision.
Okay, question for you, Jenny. This is from Richard Harrison on Facebook. Given that it seems we are going into a long period of progressive release from lockdown, probably with an increased focus on protecting the vulnerable, how do the District Council see their role in coordinating volunteer services so that people can continue to receive the support they need?
Yes, thank you, Richard. We've got no plans at the moment to stop any of the support services that we've got going at the moment. And I think, as I said at the beginning of this programme, we are implementing lots of initiatives across our towns, our villages and our hamlets that we hope will continue long after we start to come out of this. The thing to bear in mind is that we are in this for the foreseeable future at the moment, and I think there are lots of opportunities to continue these great resilient groups that people have set up in their communities to support each other, whether it be local radio stations or Zoom quiz nights or befriending services where people are looking out for each other in their neighbourhoods. So we hope that that will continue. And of course, as I also said, we will continue to support both financially and through professional support all our major big professional voluntary support services. We will need them more than ever as we come out of this.
Okay, this is from Johnny R. Again, I think this might be a joke one. In 2000, music artist Shaggy recorded the song It Wasn't Me. Since then, has CDC, yourself or any of today's police guests heard or received any evidence that it was indeed Shaggy, or was it a neighbour or other community member? Hand over to you guys. Do you know if it was Shaggy or not? Was it him?
Inquiries are still ongoing.
Yeah. Very good.
I'll echo that, I think. No idea.
Well, I would be encouraging Shaggy to take personal responsibility for his own actions, to be honest.
Exactly. And I actually heard that it was Shaggy. So we're all a bit undecided here, but we're not sure if it was him or not. So rest assured. Right, back to serious business. We have got a question here from Steve Jones. Hoping Inspector Ellson can confirm that NHS volunteer responders are permitted to drive to and from tasks, whatever they may be. Several have been challenged at a checkpoint, and the officers weren't aware of this scheme with 750,000 people in it. They aren't issued with an ID card, just an app with their details on it. Had they not been quite politely firm, they would have to return home and not complete the task. Whilst I totally appreciate the really difficult job you guys routinely have, and now we have the COVID restrictions, this is the biggest single volunteer force in a very long time. Therefore, all officers should be aware of it and able to assist. Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for raising it. I wasn't aware that was an issue. Clearly, I'm aware that, as you say, hundreds of thousands of people have volunteered, and clearly, if people are volunteering to help the vulnerable through that scheme, then they should be allowed to do that. And I think that's probably something for me to take back and raise with my colleagues and in the team, just to make them aware of that.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks. Got Sam Jane Shivers here. I wonder if the council will reduce our council tax or give us 2 to 3 months free council tax like some councils have. I'm not aware that any councils have done that. What I would say is I'd echo to a point I made a few weeks ago on the show. This crisis is costing the council millions of pounds. This month alone, April, as a council, we have lost £500,000, and we forecast this year it will probably cost us over £4 million. Our budget is £24 million, so that's a huge hit that the council are taking. We will need to find that money from somewhere. We're hoping that the government make good on promises to us a few weeks ago that they would reimburse us for the money that we spent. We still await the findings on that, and we wait to hear from them. But I just want to stress how grave, actually, the financial situation could be as a result of this epidemic. Not only for the councils, businesses and individuals, we are probably going to go into the most turbulent economic times that any of us have ever seen in our lifetime, and that will affect the council as much as it affects anybody else. We've had 10 years of austerity, and councils have really adapted to the challenge and looking at innovative ways of bringing more money in. We will continue to do that, but there will probably have to be tough decisions, and that will probably be council tax, that will be charges. We're going to have to make some tough decisions, it looks like. Hopefully we'll get some support from the government, but I want to be honest with you about that fact. There are probably going to have to be tough decisions ahead. And what I'd love to give everybody a break from council tax, well, there's no way we're in a position to do that at the minute for the reasons I've just outlined. Finally, James Partridge. It wasn't me. So on that, I think we will end the show. Thank you so much to the Barn Theatre for hosting us, and thank you to the staff here working here. We've run over slightly. I hope you found today useful. I want to thank my guests, Rich and Simon from Gloucestershire Constabulary,
Thank you,
to Jenny Forde, to Andy on the line. We'll be back next week, and we hope to have another informative and fun session. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed today's show. To support our programme and all the other fantastic programmes and content that the Barn Theatre produce, please consider making a donation by clicking the link below.